going inside the issues of our community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Last week, the House of Representatives passed an $819 billion stimulus package on a party line vote. Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. Ever since the 111th Congress convened on January 5th, everything has pointed to shaping and adopting the stimulus package. For newly elected Democratic Congressman Steve Driehaus from the Ohio's 1st District, this was the first big vote. I'm joined this morning by Congressman Driehaus. Steve, welcome back to Newsmakers.
Thank you, Dan. Great to be here.
In the 3 weeks leading up to this, since you've been in Congress, how much of your time was focused on this stimulus package?
A tremendous amount of time. And I think in order to understand the stimulus, you have to understand the state of our economy. And we have spent a lot of time talking to economists and looking at the tremendous job loss that has occurred here in this economy. You know, you only have to look at Fifth Third Bank to understand how far we have fallen. And you need to understand that we are averaging now 500,000 jobs a month lost here in the United States. And we in Ohio know very well, what those job losses mean. And you put on top of that the millions of foreclosures that we have in the United States. We are going down a steep decline. And the economists are saying, we're not quite sure where this is going, but we know it's the worst thing we've seen since the 1930s. And every economist out there, be they from the Reagan administration or the Carter administration, are saying there needs to be intervention. You can't just sit back and let this go.
Well, the Bush administration, there were two basic interventions. One was the give everybody $600 sort of approach, go out and buy something. That wasn't enough, and it wasn't very well thought through, and whatever. And then there was the $700 billion TARP money for the banks,
right?
Which now people are feeling bad about. So I find it interesting right now that the Republicans all voted against this, yet in the last administration, over the last few months, there too was a lot of attempt at stimulus there.
Right. Well, a few points. We have now placed conditions, at least the House has placed conditions on the use of the TARP funds. I supported that. I didn't vote for the release of the second half of the TARP money because those conditions weren't initially in place. There was too much latitude given to the Treasury Secretary. However, there's little doubt that intervention in the financial services sector was critically important. Now, the tax cuts simply aren't enough. This bill contains a tremendous tax cut. 95% of Americans will see a tax cut under this plan.
Who are the 5% who won't?
Well, it's the wealthiest 5%. And so up to $200,000 in income, you're seeing a tax cut. And you're going to see a child tax cut as well as a working class tax cut. So these are critical tax cuts, and that money goes right back into the economy, which is very helpful for us. But it's not enough. Those tax cuts aren't going to build bridges. They're not going to rebuild the sewer system. They're not going to put in rail lines. So in addition to the tax cuts, you need the spending. And I know that's an extremely difficult thing for people to take when we've got an $11 trillion debt, which is very burdensome. But at the same time, when there's no consumer spending, when business investment is falling, when net exports are falling, when state government and local government spending is falling, the only place to look for stimulus is the federal government.
Well, a couple things here. Last week I had your longtime friend Bill Seitz on, and Bill, pretty conservative Republican, he has no problem with infrastructure spending.
Right.
His worry was that a lot of money in this package, though, wasn't for tax cuts or for infrastructure. There was a lot of sort of just spending for operating purposes in the schools, in education, in other areas that he was questioning.
Well, remember, this is about creating jobs. And the jobs that are being created aren't just infrastructure. I would like to see more money going into infrastructure, quite frankly, and we are going to see that in the transportation infrastructure bill that will be coming up for reauthorization. But infrastructure projects traditionally take a long time to get up and running, and this is about creating jobs now. The infrastructure money that's going into this bill is for shovel-ready projects. But at the same time, we're making investments in new energy, in renewable energy. We're making investments in healthcare IT. We are making investments in education. We're helping people go to school more easily by expanding Pell Grants. So if Bill would like to call me and talk about this, I'm more than happy to talk to him. But not all of the jobs that need to be created are going to be in infrastructure. I share his concern. I want more money going into sewers, quite frankly, here in Hamilton County. But again, there were no earmarks in this bill. There were general categories.
One of the things that we were talking about, the reason I had Bill on last week was not so much the federal stimulus package, but the state of the state budget,
Right.
which you know a lot about.
Right.
And of course the governor just gave the state of the state address on Thursday. $4.7 to $7.3 billion shortfall, and what was news last week with Bill was that he and other legislators had been hearing that because of the stimulus package, Ohio might get anywhere from $6 to $9 billion from the stimulus package, which in effect in some ways wipes out that deficit. Is that what it looks like to you that Ohio's going to receive?
I don't know exactly what the numbers are. About half the money is going to states and half the money is going to local governments. That's the way the package is being structured. If you look at the money going to the states, it's primarily through Medicaid funds, really helping states draw down on the Medicaid funds, which are really driving the cost of state budgets. It's also an increase in unemployment compensation, going to those families who are losing their jobs to keep them afloat. This is critical assistance to states. So it's that type of money that's going into the states. The education money that was referred to is going directly to school districts. It's bypassing the states, going directly to school districts. And so there's a balance between the funding going to the states and going directly to local governments.
One of the things that Bill raised was there's weatherization money in this, and that's not infrastructure, he would say.
He's
What would
right.
you say? Okay.
But it is job creation. It's job creation, and it's moving us toward the cleanest type of energy, which is efficiency. And we know that efficiency, especially in residential and commercial buildings, is the cheapest way to move us toward energy independence. It is creating jobs. This bill is about creating jobs. It's not just about bridges, roads, and sewers. It is about job creation.
It's not just the end product, it's what it takes to get there.
Right, so it's not just infrastructure. I, again, will emphasize, we will be putting additional investment in infrastructure. I wish we were putting more into this, but it takes time for those infrastructure projects.
You know, the second half of the TARP money, which you said that you didn't vote for the immediate release until
Right.
there's some changes. There's now talk, because the banks continue to decline, there's now talk that that's not going to be enough in the banking sector, in the financial sector. Are you prepared to look at even more than the $350 billion that's ready to be released?
Well, I think before we come anywhere close to looking at additional funds for financial institutions, the financial institutions have to explain to us what's been done with the first 350. Our argument is that there hasn't been enough transparency in how this money was used, and there hasn't been nearly enough effort in foreclosure mitigation to stop families from going into foreclosure. We still have these foreclosures being filed, and we want to bring, if not a halt, we certainly want to slow down that process.
Is there money in the stimulus package directly for people facing foreclosure?
Yes, there is, and there's money also in the stimulus package to help cities and townships and rural areas who are suffering from the number of abandoned buildings, like the thousands of abandoned buildings we have here in Cincinnati. I want that money going into local governments to help neighborhoods rebuild. Again, you've got to put this in perspective. The economists out there are saying this is the deepest recession we've seen since the 30s. Some of them are now talking about depression. We are trying to avert this. This is about getting people back on track, creating jobs, rebuilding neighborhoods. It's a tough pill to swallow. There's no doubt about it. But consider the alternative. And it's when you consider the alternative that the spending package makes some sense.
Real quick, I've got less than a minute. What's it been like to be a new member of Congress under this pressure? A lot of pressure on you from leadership?
It's like drinking out of a fire hose. But it's been very busy. But I've welcomed the opportunity. It's a privilege to serve. It's great to get in there and fight for the families here in Cincinnati.
Well, Steve, you'll be back many times. Thank you for being here this morning, and keep working up there in Washington.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. After the break, an important and special investigative report by Jeff Hirsh. Their pockets to help pay for police Welcome back. On Tuesday, Union Township voters in Claremont County are being asked to dig deep into their pockets to help pay for police and fire services. At a time when home values are crashing and unemployment is skyrocketing, citizens may find it hard to support a special tax levy that would cost a homeowner an additional $180 for every $100,000 of valuation. Over the last year and a half, Local 12 reporter Jeff Hirsh has been looking into the way the township is spending millions of dollars on a project which might raise some questions. Welcome back. On Tuesday, Union Township voters in Claremont County are being asked to dig deep into their pockets to help pay for a police and fire service levy. At the same time, let's do it one more time. I'm sorry, I lost track of what the Welcome back. On Tuesday, Union Township voters in Claremont County are being asked to dig deep into their pockets to help pay for police and fire services. At a time when home values are crashing and unemployment is skyrocketing, citizens may find it hard to support a special tax levy that would cost a homeowner an additional $180 for every $100,000 of valuation. Over the last year and a half, Local 12 reporter Jeff Hirsh has been looking into the way the township is spending millions of dollars on a project which might raise some questions.
The crosstown shootout, UC against Xavier, always the hottest ticket in town.
And as non-conference rivalries go, there's not many better.
The 2005 shootout was especially nerve-wracking. Sean Miller's debut as the man in charge.
Sean Miller, the first-year head coach for Xavier.
And what would turn out to be Bob Huggins' last.
He's now one of the winningest active head coaches in college basketball, and we are underway.
Among the 13,176 fans in this sold-out arena, a couple of guys in really good seats right there behind the Xavier bench. On the left, Chuck Kubicki, president of Cincinnati United Contractors, a construction company. On the right, Ken Geis, at the time, township administrator in Union Township, Claremont County. Kubicki's company had just finished a $7 million project for Geis's Township, the new Civic Center. And in a letter to Kubicki just 1 week before the game, Geis said, "One of the biggest assets was having you, Chuck, in most of the meetings. The work that CUC did was incredible. Thank you very much." But this mutual admiration society, basketball buddies, and a gushing thank you letter would not end with the Civic Center project. Instead, it would see Chuck Kubicki give Ken Geis a job, a really good job, which raises questions about state ethics laws, about how your tax dollars are spent, and about how a different high-profile project was put together. You can't miss it as you drive I-275. A big, beautiful new office building, and behind it, more work. To make way for even more development, a park, and another new office. The promise is jobs, and that certainly seems to be happening. But there are questions about one particular job and how one particular person ended up getting it. The office building back there behind me was put up for a company called Total Quality Logistics by Cincinnati United Contractors, CUC, which is developing this entire site called Ivy Point. The vice president and chief operating officer right now at CUC is Ken Geis. But Ken Geis was not working for CUC when he pushed hard for the development. He was working for you as the Union Township administrator, his $130,000 annual salary paid by the taxpayers. In fact, Geis would say, in Claremont County, this is the most aggressive effort that any municipal county government has ever put forward toward a site. But after lobbying big time for a project which he put on the fast track, and after guiding it through various layers of government, and just weeks after getting a $10,000 bonus from Union Township from the taxpayers, Ken Geis retired and went to work at Cincinnati United Contractors, a company which would ultimately sell millions of dollars worth of property at this very same site to Union Township. Is this legal? Is it ethical? Is it good business? Or is it an example of Union Township business as usual? Cliff Johnson is a candidate for township trustee.
I believe business in Union Township a lot of times is done in the shadows. There's a lot of mistrust going on with elected officials in Union Township.
Ohio ethics laws prohibit government officials from trying to get a job with a company doing business with that government agency. In most cases, they can't even talk about it. Local 12 has examined hundreds of pages of court documents, minutes of government meetings, and land transactions. What we've found is a curious web of interlocking interests, which raise an important question. Are public officials working for the public interest first, or for their own? Consider this property, now a road, which Cincinnati United Contractors bought for $81,000 an acre, was later sold for $300,000 an acre to, guess who? Union Township. That's right. Ken Geis's old employer, the Township, bought land from Ken Geis's new employer, CUC, at a 300% markup. What's going on? There are a lot of questions, no doubt. So let's start with this one. Did Ken Geis talk with CUC about a job while Geis was still working at Union Township? If so, that could violate state ethics laws. The project, Ivy Point, was clearly a joint Ken Geis CUC production beginning in 2005, shortly before Geis would quit the township to work for the contractor. In a lawsuit filed by a different developer, Geis admitted, "Mr. Geis, you were happily involved in the project on behalf of Union Township in its formative stages, were you not?" Answer, yes. In that same lawsuit, Clermont County Administrator David Spinney testified the county was approached by Union Township and Cincinnati United Contractors about the project. And in December 2005, Chuck Kubicki, the head of CUC, and Ken Geis, Union Township Administrator, put on the full court press, asking Clermont County to buy land for the development. Kubicki saying he highly recommends this project, the best deal he has seen since he has been in business. And Geis saying revenue to Clermont County should be great. Nothing unusual there. A good township administrator is supposed to bring in business. But if that administrator is talking to one of those businesses about a job, well, that's a possible problem, because whose interest is he representing? The taxpayers, the businesses, or his own? And while Ken Geis and CUC were working together on Ivy Point, Union Township taxpayers were putting more money into Ken Geis's pocket. In early January 2006, records show Township trustees gave Geis a new contract, plus a $10,000 bonus, a 5% raise, and a higher pension when Geis would submit his retirement, which he did on January 29, 2006. Less than 2 months later, Ken Geis was working at CUC, working on the same project he helped deliver. CUC's response to all of this is vague. Company spokesperson Marvin Kleinman tells Local 12 that when Geis was with the township, he did get a legal opinion clearing him to talk to CUC. However, would not provide a copy, would not say who gave the opinion, nor would give any dates. The Ohio Ethics Commission says it wasn't them. Kleinman also says that Geis did recuse himself from any dealings with CUC once the job became apparent, but again, no documents, no dates. What would you do differently out there?
Open things up, open the government up to let the public know what's actually going on as compared to some of the backroom deals that have happened in the past.
One thing is clear. If you dig deeply into the paper trail, Ken Geis was busy helping CUC make money on the project he helped create as Union Township Administrator. For example, Clermont County appointed Geis to an Ivy Point Architectural Review Board because, as the county administrator noted, Mr. Geis is an employee of Cincinnati United Contractors, which is developing the property. Mr. Geis is a logical selection since he would be responsible for protecting CUC's investment. That investment included land and millions of public dollars. So there are questions about how the big money deal that Chuck Kubicki and Ken Geis pushed for ultimately ended up with their company receiving a lot of public dollars. At issue, a series of land transfers. In March 2007, just 1 year after leaving the township for his new job, Geis signed off on a land acquisition for CUC. The contractor bought a 2.5-acre parcel from Clermont County for $81,000 an acre, and the same day transferred that property to Union Township for a price this document says to be determined but believed to be worth $300,000 an acre, which when ultimately paid would be a 300% markup. And here's something else which is curious. That believed to be $300,000 an acre price tag, how do they come up with that? Well, an appraisal was done by a real estate company, as you would expect. But get this, that appraisal was done 7 months after Union Township and CUC estimated the price per acre at $300,000. So it looks like CUC knew exactly how much it wanted before the value of the land was established by the appraisal. And there's more. The seller, CUC, paid for the appraisal, and Union Township, the buyer, accepted it, no questions asked. That's kind of like me selling you my house. I say, here's how much it's worth. You say, sure, I'll pay that. No negotiating, no independent appraisal. How are Union Township taxpayers protected by something like that? Trustees Chair Bob McGee says they are, because the appraiser was, quote, well trusted and used by the township before. Greg Conrad says that's not good enough. What are your thoughts about a township that simply accepts an appraisal provided to them by a seller of the land?
No, you would get your own appraisal.
Conrad is an elected trustee in neighboring Pierce Township. He says paying what the seller asks without your own review is crazy.
It's the stewardship of being a trustee. You have to go out and make sure you're protecting the interest of the taxpayers. So that would be getting your own appraisal.
Conrad is a Democrat and ran unsuccessfully for county clerk, but getting a truly independent appraisal is not simply a partisan response. Claremont County Administrator David Spinney says accepting the seller's appraisal is not the best way to protect the public's dollar. Spinney says if he was doing the deal, quote, it's in our best interests to have our own appraisal. I wouldn't just accept the seller's appraisal. But consider this. Neither CUC nor Trustees Chair McGee is saying how the believed to be $300,000 an acre cost was determined before the appraisal. Who came up with the number? What documentation was used? McGee says if the appraisal did come in at less than $300,000 an acre, the lower figure would have been paid. But it did not come in less. It came in at the exact same amount Union Township and CUC expected it to come in at 7 months before the appraisal was supposed to determine the value. Curious. And hang on, there's more. Including the first parcel, Union Township is buying even more of this property from CUC at $300,000 an acre, a total of 19.5 acres, including land for a park, ultimately costing taxpayers $5.8 million. But the park raises another question. The appraisal, $300,000 an acre, is based on, quote, highest and best use, a commercial office development. Trustees Chair McGee says the price is fair because a developer could get that price from somebody else. But a park is not commercial development. It produces no jobs, no taxes, no revenue. It's a park. It generates no money. So why did Union Township acquire the land for $300,000 an acre when CUC bought it for only about $80,000?
I think there are a lot of questions about Ivy Point as it pertains to the value of the first purchase of $80,000 and then the selling price to $300,000 an acre for a park. That's taxpayer money.
And now look at this. Union Township is talking about a $2 million budget cut. That could mean jobs and service reductions. $2 million. Just about what the township paid to a private contractor, CUC, for 8 or so acres of what became a park. That's not all. Besides talking budget cuts, the township is also asking residents for a tax hike for police and fire services to prevent layoffs. But even as the township talks budget cuts and tax hikes, it's locked into paying even more money to Cincinnati United contractors. Not just for the road, not just for the park, but for nearly 9 more acres in Ivy Point, which have not even been publicly identified, and there's no specific plans for using it. By the time the deal is finished, Union Township taxpayers will potentially be giving CUC, Ken Geis's new employer, a $4 million plus profit. As you might imagine, we wanted to interview Chuck Kubicki and Ken Geis, but they refused to go on camera unless we would air their response, as Geis put it in a letter, in its entirety unedited, something no journalistic organization could accept. Company spokesman Marvin Kleinman denied any wrongdoing. Quote, Everything done through this office is done ethically and above board. He described Geis as someone with, quote, impeccable credibility and reputation. Kleinman said $300,000 per acre is more than fair, perhaps even low, because CUC put in so much work building the road, the park, increasing the value of the entire site. Trustees note Ivy Point has brought jobs and tax dollars to the township. But even if Ivy Point is a good project, do the ends justify the means? Greg Conrad says no.
Anybody can say it's a legitimate argument, but if you start down that's a slippery slope. Where does it then stop? At what point do you say, I'm doing it absolutely for the best and I'm going to cut these corners? And yeah, it ends up with my brother-in-law or it ends up with somebody that I know. You open up that door and it becomes very, very dicey.
So, is all of this legal? Is it ethical? Is it business or is it business as usual? Good questions, curious connections, perhaps summed up by something Ken Geis said to the Union Township trustees, his former bosses. On March 13, 2007, just 2 days before the township agreed to buy some of CUC's land, minutes of the Union Township trustees meeting say the following. Mr. Geis wanted to thank Mr. Walker, that's Doug Walker, Geis's replacement as administrator, and Union Township for all of the support that Cincinnati United contractors receive. Hard to disagree with a slam dunk.
Nice feed to Maxiel, making no
Like
mistake
that.
about that one.
Jeff Hirsh, Local 12.
Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Next week, David Pepper, the new president of the Hamilton County Commission, and also the author of a new book on Marcus Feisel. Have a good week.